Beautiful YouTube family, Lisa A. Romano here, the Breakthrough Life Coach, and I want to say thank you to all of my wonderful YouTube followers. You're just freaking awesome. And I love the comments, and I love the questions that you guys send me in the comment section. It's awesome. I had a YouTuber ask me a question about children because she knows we have a lot of kids. And she wanted to know, how can I get my child to listen to me? So apparently she's been following my work, and she likes my advice, and this channel is about my advice, and I try to help people see things from a different perspective, because we can't walk around in life with an ant's perspective. Not going to work. You know what happens to ants? They get stepped on, dear ones, and they live underground, and they have one purpose, and that's to collect food. So often, so many of us live life thinking that this perspective, our perspective, is the only perspective, and we feel like we are the center of the universe, and we're not. Well, I guess from our perspective we are, but if you imagine, how many 7 billion, I don't even know how many people there are on this planet these days, but billions of people on the planet. Imagine every single person on the planet has their ant-like perspective, and they think they're the center of the universe. So it's just really, really interesting. So I want to open up your mind a little bit. So for those of you who know my story, I woke up to the idea that I was codependent many years ago. I got a divorce, and I did a lot of stupid things as an unrecovered codependent, and I made a lot of mistakes with my children, especially my first child. So I share what I've learned, and I'm really, really appreciative that so many of you appreciate what I've learned. And so one of the things that I used to do with my son was, and actually even with myself, is I always pointed out what this poor kid was doing wrong. Very much the way I dealt with myself. I would look in a mirror, and I would, just stare at my stomach, because, my stomach was not flat. And I would stare at, the one pimple that I had on my face, or I would stare at the one hair that was out of place. And, I would look around my house, and I wouldn't see what area of the house was actually cleaned up. I would only see the 3 toys that were near the couch, and they weren't in their right place. And God forbid Queen Elizabeth came to my house on a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock and saw these 3 toys that were not in the toy basket. I mean, I lived like a crazy person. Seriously. But I was raised by a crazy person. Seriously. My mom was, well, love you, Mom, but she was a clean freak. And my father was a money freak. And everything was about control, 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 control. So I was raised, they picked out everything that was wrong about me from their perspective. We all know now that we're all divine and we're all perfect, and there ain't nothing wrong with us, really, seriously, except for our dysfunctional childhood programming. And the people that do not nice things are people that are way below the veil of consciousness and are very far removed from their divinity. They don't know that they're divine. And if you imagine your divinity is your light, the worst things that a person does in their life, morally, considering morally, that just means the further they are from their light and the darker they are in their subconscious programming, which is really sad. So we didn't know that. And so we were raised by people who are very critical of us. And so we raise our children, and we point out what they do wrong all the time. So my son, my poor kid, man, I want a do-over, I want a do-over as a mom. He would come home from kindergarten, and he had very poor handwriting, and I didn't know it at the time that he was having a visual problem. And if the margin was on the left-hand side of the page, my son would write on an angle, and I would say to him, "No, that's not good. You have to do that over. Do it over. Start next to the line." And I would rip out his homework if he didn't do it next to the line. I realize now, because I understand the pain versus pleasure principle of the brain, I realize now that I was helping my son associate pain with doing his homework. And when a child associates pain with doing their homework, guess what you have? You have a brain that is resistant to learning. You have a brain that's resistant to sitting down and doing homework. We're actually reinforcing the exact consequence we're trying to avoid. But we don't know that. No one tells us this stuff when we have kids. And by the way, there should be disclaimers on, like I don't know, on condoms or something. I don't know. People should know how difficult it is to raise a child. And I am a coach that helps children come to terms with their wounds of childhood. So the mothers and the fathers are going to get blamed, for messing up the children. So it behooves us to learn as much as we can about raising our children and understanding as much as we can about what our child needs and arming ourselves with tools that will make us more effective parents. So when we are picking out the things about our children's homework, let's say, or the things about the way that they look, they don't brush their teeth, they don't comb their hair, boys go through that, it's very, very natural. Wait till they get a girlfriend, then all changes. They don't clean their room. They don't want to clean their room. They're little. They associate pain with stopping playing video games and cleaning up their room. So for those of you who don't really follow my work and you don't understand my work around the pain versus pleasure principle in the brain, essentially it goes like this. The brain has a default setting. It's pain versus pleasure. So Creator, Source, in His infinite wisdom, has created this guidance system. And what we do as human beings is our brain is built to avoid pain and seek pleasure. So the brain also flags traumatic events as painful. And the brain wants to remember what was painful so that the brain can avoid it in the future. This is the problem, though. When we have, let's say, a child who, I just had this incident with someone in my coaching program who, I'm paraphrasing, but her son forgot to take out the garbage, okay? So that she took out the garbage to the curb, and then her response was, I have to discipline him, and I have to make sure he knows that this was wrong, blah, 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 blah. And I understand that's what most parents do. Your child is supposed to do something, they don't do it, and then we criticize them for not doing it, and then they feel judged, and guess what happens? In their brain, they're associating pain with taking out the garbage. And the brain is going to want to avoid the pain of this experience. Anything that has to do with the garbage is going to be flagged as a painful experience. More than likely, the kid is not going to remember to take out the garbage because the brain is designed to avoid this pain or any drama or trauma around this garbage. So the best thing that you can do is create a system, get a little clever, dear ones. We're the adults. We have to be the clever ones. So the best advice I can offer you, and I learned this a little too late with my oldest son, but I'm trying to make up for it with the younger two children. And even today, even though he's an adult now, I still try to use this. Pay attention to what they do right and praise what they do right. I wrote down, we don't make our kids better by pointing out what's wrong with them. Because what happens is when we try to make our children better by pointing out what's wrong with them, guess what? All they do in their head is we download them to pay attention to what's wrong with them. So when our children gets a 3.6 average in college, that's not good enough because all he can see or all she can see is the fact that she didn't get a 4.0 or he didn't get a 4.0. So we have to be very, very careful. I do believe that using the pain versus pleasure principle to our advantages as parents is very useful. So you want to become super aware, super conscious. You don't want to live like an ant. You want to be in a higher perspective. And you've got to understand what it is you want from your child. So if you want him to brush his teeth, we say something to our child like, my teeth feel so good, I just brushed them. You start to use the idea, associate pleasure with brushing teeth. Then you could say, if you notice that he does brush his teeth, you say, wow, your teeth look awesome. What'd you do? He brushed his teeth. But then he says, I brushed my teeth. Well, wow, they look great. Now we're associating pleasure with brushing our teeth. If your child does not want to do the dishes, what you can say is, if let's say you ask them to please help you with the dishes and they help you with the dishes. Now they're not doing it on their own. You've actually asked them to help you and now they're helping you. What you want to say is, wow, mommy really loves it when you help me do the dishes. It's time for us to talk, or, I just feel really, really loved and appreciated that you You think that I'm that valuable to help me do the dishes. It means a lot to me. You associate praise with doing the dishes. That's pleasure. The brain wants to move towards pleasure. Everything that your child does right, but you don't want to be phony about it. If your kid strikes out at baseball, don't be the mom that says, "Good job, Johnny, good job." That is inauthentic. The kid struck out. What you want to say to Johnny is, "I know you gave it your best shot. It sucks that you struck out." You want to validate little Johnny's experience. It's not his fault, it's not the end of the world, but we want to acknowledge that this child is having a real life experience of feeling disappointed. He let his team down. So when I talk about praising your child, you don't want to come off inauthentic, disingenuous. Children can smell it. They know you're full of crap. So your praise has to match their behavior. So your kid, I have a big issue in this house. I put their sneakers on the staircase for a reason. I want them to bring it up to their rooms. And I say to them all the time, "Did you not see your sneakers on the staircase?" Today my daughter said, "Well, they're not mine." I'm like, "It doesn't matter. You're going upstairs." Like, I don't get it. But then I caught myself. Then I said to her, "I would really appreciate it if you brought your sister's shoes up there. That makes me so happy." So I hope this makes sense. We have to really be careful. So many times we as human beings, we think that the right thing to do to get people to do what we would like them to do is to point out that they're not doing it, that they're not doing what you want them to do. But all that does is reinforce the negative. So we have to be more clever. We have to be more awake. We have to come from a higher perspective. We have to understand the pleasure principle. We have to minimize the things that we criticize about our children, and then increase what praise when it comes to getting our children to do the kinds of things we want them to do. So when your child picks their socks up off the floor, you have to acknowledge that. If your child makes half a bed, we have to acknowledge that. When I was a kid, no matter what I did, it wasn't good enough. I didn't vacuum the lines straight enough in the carpet. Okay. I didn't, whatever. Whatever I attempted to do, it just wasn't quite good enough. And now I know, thank the Lord, but now I know whenever I ask any of my kids to do anything, I praise them for any attempt that they make, because I want them to help me more in the future, and I don't want to argue with them, and I want to make them responsible. I want them to understand they have a responsibility. When you live with more than one person, you have a responsibility to all the people in the home. But anyway, thank you so much for asking me what I think about how you could get your child to help you around the house more without so many problems, without so many arguments. So try to associate pleasure with the task that you ask them to do. And when you ask them to do a task and they do it, associate pleasure with that task. And try to avoid not picking out what's wrong in your opinion. Try to shutty. Try not to make a big deal out of the little things. Remember, pick your battles. The other thing to remember is that we're constantly downloading our children. So if you constantly criticize your child and they end up feeling that they're not good enough, that becomes their emotional set point. They really will walk through life feeling like they're not good enough. And you love your children. You don't want them to feel that way. And they really will walk through life looking in the mirror, and they won't see how beautiful they are or how fit they are or how perfect they are just the way they are. They won't see any of that. They'll only see a perceived flaw, because we have taught them to pay attention to some perceived flaw. And even if there's something about our child that we need to address, and I'm not talking about serious issues here, I'm talking about cleaning and brushing the teeth and helping out with the dishes, just doing homework, those types of things. I'm not talking about lying, but even with lying, if your child tells you the truth, you could praise your child for telling you the truth. Even if your child comes to you and says, "Mom, I told you a lie the other day," listen to what they're saying and then just say, "I really do appreciate that you told me the truth." If you react strongly to a child that tells you, "Mom, I lied," what'll happen is you'll associate pain with coming to tell you the truth. And so when that happens, it's going to be harder for your child to tell you the truth next time, even if they want to, because in their brain now, the brain has been flagged this telling the truth as an emotional event, which has brought him or her pain. So I hope this video has helped. It went over a little bit more than I thought it would, but I wanted to address that YouTube comment today. So thank you so much. Namaste, dear ones, and I am bowing to the love and the light in you.